My name is Anna Christina. I am 52 years old, a retired teacher, and a Christian for as long as I can remember. I grew up believing that marriage was an eternal covenant, a sacred bond that, even amidst pain, I should honor until the end. For decades, I lived this belief as an absolute truth. But 2 years ago, something happened that turned my life upside down and made me question everything I knew about love, faith, and God's will. Have you ever wondered if God prefers to see us trapped in silent unhappiness or allows us to find peace? Does He bind us with rules or call us to the freedom of the heart? I'm here to share a story that might change how you view your own choices, fears, and even your relationship with Him. Leave a comment about where you're listening from. Knowing that we are connected, even being so far apart, gives me strength to open my heart. Subscribe to the channel, grab something to drink, and join me on this journey. What you're going to hear is not just about me. It might be about you too. It's a story of pain, doubt, death, and rebirth. A story that took me beyond life and brought me back with a truth I never imagined. Let's begin. It was a sultry afternoon in São Gonçalo, Rio de Janeiro, where I was born and lived all my life. The heat clung to the skin, and the old fan in the living room spun lazily, spreading more noise than relief. I was sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by a pile of 7th grade exams, a routine that filled my days since I graduated as a teacher. The red pen marked automatic answers, but my mind was elsewhere. The smell of reheated coffee hung in the air, mixed with the muffled sound of the television in the next room. My husband Carlos was there, as always, sprawled on the sofa. The remote control in hand, his gaze lost in some program he didn't even seem to see. There was no conversation, no exchange, just a silence that weighed like a stone on the chest. I met Carlos at 22, at a church party my mother insisted I attend. He was tall, thin, with a shy smile that disarmed me instantly. A fisherman in his spare time, he told stories of the sea, about fish that got away, nets that tore, storms that almost took him. I laughed until I was breathless, enchanted by his simplicity. At 25, we married in a modest ceremony at the neighborhood Baptist church. I wore a white dress my aunt sewed. He was nervous beside me, and together we promised eternal love before God and a few witnesses, my family, some friends, and the pastor who blessed us. In the early years, it was everything I dreamed of. He brought me flowers stolen from the neighbor's garden, called me my queen, and made me feel as if the world was too small for our plans. We wanted a bigger house, children running in the yard, a life full of laughter, prayers, and Sundays at church, but time changes things. Gradually, the Carlos I loved began to fade. The flowers stopped coming. The sea stories gave way to grunts or silence. He came home from work, threw his boots in the corner, ate without saying a word, and got lost in front of the TV until he fell asleep on the sofa. I tried to start a conversation. How was your day? Want to go to the beach on Sunday? But it was like talking to a shadow. His touch, once warm and present, turned into a void I felt even being centimeters away from him. At night, I lay in bed, staring at the cracks in the ceiling while he snored on the other side, an invisible chasm growing between us. As a Christian, I was taught that marriage is sacred, an unbreakable bond. What God has joined together, let no man separate, the pastor said every Sunday, quoting Matthew 19 verse 6. My mother, a woman of rigid faith, reinforced, marriage is until death, Christina. No matter what happens, you endure. So I fought to make it work. I knelt night after night, hands pressed against my chest, praying with tears in my eyes, Lord, restore my marriage, bring him back to me. Make him love me again like in the beginning. I fasted until my stomach growled. I read the Bible in search of promises and went to every service hoping for a miracle. But the years passed, 5, 10, 15, and nothing changed. The more I prayed, the more he drifted away. Not with anger or fights, but with an indifference that cut deeper than any scream. A question began to haunt me. First, as a whisper, then as a scream I couldn't silence. What if this never changes? Does God want me to live like this forever? I suppressed it, ashamed, because thinking about divorce was a sin, or at least that's what I was taught. In church, the verse from Malachi 2 verse 16 echoed as a warning: God hates divorce. My family repeated, "You made a vow before God, Christina. You can't go back." So I endured. I accepted. After all, Carlos didn't hit me, didn't cheat on me, didn't forbid me from anything. In the eyes of others, he was a good husband. But deep down, I wondered, was that enough? Was a life without love, warmth, connection what God planned for me? I didn't talk about it with anyone. I couldn't. If I told a sister from church that I was unhappy, the answer was always the same: pray more, Christina. Fast, be submissive. God will fix it. But I had prayed until my voice failed. I had fasted until my body weakened, and Carlos remained the same, a stranger in my own house. Did God create me to live a lie? Did he want me to carry this emptiness until the end of my days? The doubts suffocated me, but I didn't have the courage to face them until one ordinary afternoon, fate or God decided for me. It was Saturday, around 2 in the afternoon. The sun came through the slats of the kitchen blinds, drawing golden stripes on the ceramic floor. I was washing the lunch dishes, rice, beans, and a simple meat that Carlos barely touched before returning to the sofa. The radio on the window played an old song, Rude Cruise, that my mother sang to put me to sleep when I was a child. The sound was low, almost swallowed by the fan's hum, but it brought me a bittersweet nostalgia. Suddenly, dizziness hit me. The heat, I thought, drying my hands on the worn apron I had worn for years. I grabbed a glass of water from the sink, but before I could bring it to my mouth, the world spun. My legs gave way, the glass slipped from my hands, and shattered on the floor with a dry crack. I didn't feel the fall. Just the silence that followed, a different silence, deep, as if the universe held its breath. I blinked, trying to understand, but the kitchen disappeared. Then I saw. My body was there, lying among the shards of glass, skin pale as wax, chest still. Carlos ran in, face red with panic, shouting my name, "Anna, Anna, wake up." He fell to his knees beside me, hands trembling as he grabbed the phone on the wall. "Hello, emergency, my wife fainted, she's not breathing." I heard Mrs. Lucia, our neighbor, crying in the background. "My God, call someone quickly." Someone shouted to make space. Another said, "She's turning blue," but I felt nothing. No pain, no fear, just a strange calm, as if floating above the chaos. Suddenly, I was pulled. I don't know how to describe it. It was like an invisible force yanking me out of myself. A strong wind sucking my soul out of the body. The floor disappeared. The kitchen walls dissolved. And I plunged into a dark, cold void. There was no light, no sound. Just a cold that cut to the bone and a sensation of endless falling. I tried to scream, but my voice didn't come out. I tried to grab onto something, but there was nothing to hold, no body, no hands, just a me I didn't understand. Is this death? I thought, the heart, or what was left of it, racing in growing panic. God, where are you? Help me, don't leave me here. The void seemed eternal. I was falling, or rising, or maybe not moving at all, it was impossible to know. The panic swallowed me, gripping every piece of what I still was. Was this the end? Had I died thinking of divorce and now would pay for it? Had God abandoned me because of my doubts? Then, I heard something. A low whisper, almost a murmur, coming from all sides at once. You know. The voice was cold, mocking, and made me tremble in a way I never felt before. Before I could respond, the silence returned heavier than ever, like a black curtain falling over my soul. The void didn't last long. Suddenly, whispers filled the air. Muffled voices, like a poorly tuned radio, speaking words I couldn't decipher. There were many, coming from all directions, a confused chorus surrounding me. Then came the screams of despair, of pain, of regret, echoing as if an invisible crowd suffered around me. Shadows emerged in the darkness, distorted shapes, some vaguely human, others unrecognizable. They twisted, faces frozen in expressions of terror, deep eyes staring at me as if they knew me, as if they judged me. A voice cut through the chaos, clearer than the others, carrying a mocking tone that chilled me. Now you know, my heart, or what was left of it, raced. Knew what? What was happening? Where was I? Then, a light appeared in the distance, faint at first, like a flame trembling in the wind. It grew quickly, warm and alive, swallowing the shadows and bringing a peace that penetrated every part of me. The ground formed under my feet, soft as moss but firm as rock. The air had a sweet scent, almost floral, like jasmine in full spring, and seemed to pulse with life. Before me, a tall, imposing figure, enveloped in a light that didn't blind but warmed to the soul. I knew instantly, it was Jesus. My legs trembled, a lump rose in my throat, and tears rolled down uncontrollably. He said my name, Anna. Just that, but it was as if the entire universe had stopped to listen. His voice was gentle but carried a power I felt in my bones, like the sound of a calm river, but deep enough to carry mountains. Are you afraid? He continued. I swallowed hard, chest tight. Yes, I was afraid. Afraid of making mistakes, of sinning, of being there for thinking about divorce, of displeasing God with my doubts. Before I could speak, he raised his hand, and images appeared around me like a movie projected in the air, vivid and real. I saw my marriage. Me, young and radiant, at the altar with Carlos, the white dress flowing, heart overflowing with hope as the pastor read Genesis 2 verse 24. Then, me alone at the kitchen table, spinning the ring on my fingers, eyes red from crying, the silence of the house swallowing me. I saw my prayers, whole nights kneeling by the bed, begging for a miracle that never came. Lord, change him. Change us both, make this work. And finally, my body on the floor, among the glass shards, Carlos shouting my name. What did you learn? He asked. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. For years, I sought answers, certainty, a sign, but now, before him, I realized my entire life had been guided by fear, not understanding. The scene changed. We were in a different place, vast, limitless, like an ocean of light dancing in shades of gold, silver, and colors I had never seen on earth. He spoke again, what do you believe a covenant is? I tried to answer, a commitment, something eternal, a vow before God. My voice faltered, weak and uncertain, then he showed other stories, images appearing like windows around me. A young woman crying at an empty altar, removing the ring with trembling hands, heartbroken but eyes determined, free. A man alone holding an old photo, face marked by regret, he cheated on his wife, lost his family, and now lived with the weight of guilt. A mother with young children, signing divorce papers, body covered with marks from a violent marriage, eyes firm despite the tears. And an elderly couple sitting side by side, hands united but eyes distant, together for decades but empty inside, trapped by habit, not love. The covenant I made with man is about the heart, not rules, he said. How many carry rings on their fingers but have already broken the vows in their souls? How many marry for convenience, for fear, for tradition, and never for love? How many live together but were never one in spirit? My chest tightened. His words cutting like a gentle blade. I didn't create marriage to be a prison, Anna. I created it to be a reflection of my love, a love that frees, that gives life, not that oppresses. Biblical images appeared around me, like living pages opening before my eyes. I saw Moses in Deuteronomy 24, allowing divorce because of human hardness. Not as an ideal, but as mercy. I saw Jesus in Matthew 19, confronting the Pharisees, saying divorce came from men, not God, but speaking of hearts, not rigid laws. I saw Paul in 1 Corinthians 7 verse 15, saying God calls us to peace, not slavery. What I want is living love, not dead weight, he said. How many carry burdens I never placed on them? How many live in guilt for what has passed, without asking my true will? I looked around and saw women emerging in the light, some old, bent by time, others young, still marked by struggle. All had stories like mine. One of them spoke, voice gentle but laden with pain, I lived with a man who never loved me. I endured silences that cut deeper than knives, words that diminished me. I thought God wanted this, that my pain was my cross. Another, younger, approached, eyes red from crying. I separated, but they told me I was condemned. I lived in fear of never being forgiven, of never having salvation. Their voices echoed in me because I could be any of them, trapped by fear or guilty for seeking freedom. Now that you've seen, are you still afraid? He asked. I looked into his eyes, deep as the sea, gentle as the dawn, and felt something break inside me. It wasn't just fear, but guilt, the chains I carried unknowingly. The weight of a life lived to please others, not God. The truth sets free, he said. But do you have the courage to live it? My body trembled. Yes, I understood. God didn't want to see me chained to a loveless marriage, to an empty relationship, to a covenant that only existed on paper. But now, could I start over? The light began to recede, the women disappeared, and I knew my answer would come on the return. I felt a strong pull, like falling from a bottomless abyss. I opened my eyes in the hospital, the beep of monitors cutting the silence, the cold air burning in my lungs. My chest hurt, each breath was an effort. Carlos was beside me, face pale, eyes red from lack of sleep. You came back, he murmured, voice hoarse, almost a whisper. The doctors rushed around, speaking quickly, hemorrhagic stroke, 18 minutes without oxygen, an inexplicable miracle. There were no brain damages, no sign I should be alive after so long stopped, but I was, and I felt every heartbeat like a drum echoing in my chest. The following days were a blur of tests, medications, and worried faces. My body was weak. I could barely get out of bed without help. My legs trembled as if made of cotton. Carlos stayed around in the first days, bringing water, adjusting the pillow, but it was the same as always. Physically present but distant in everything that mattered. I watched from the bed, trying to find the man I loved, the fisherman of funny stories, but only saw a stranger with an empty gaze. My mind, however, was alive, spinning with what I had seen. That light, that voice, those women, was it real? Or a delusion of my nearly dead mind? I told my church sister, Ana Marcia, hoping for support, maybe a word of comfort. She listened in silence, brow furrowed, then said, "Be careful, Ana, the enemy deceives with visions. Divorce is against God's will. You know what Malachi says?" Her words hit me like a punch in the stomach. What if she was right? What if I had been deceived by some illusion disguised as light? But then the signs began to appear. The wind came through the hospital room window, bringing the scent of jasmine, my favorite flower, even out of season. The hospital radio, which barely got a signal, played hymns from my childhood, "Great is the Lord, because He lives," as if someone wanted to remind me, I'm here. The struggle wasn't just physical, my head became a battlefield. What if I separate? I thought, staring at the ceiling at night. What if remarrying is a sin? Will God forgive me for wanting to be happy? The fear returned, whispering that I was wrong, that I would pay dearly for defying what I was taught. But his voice echoed stronger, the truth sets free. I began to read the Bible with new eyes, as if the words came to life for the first time. In Matthew 19 verse 9, Jesus talks about divorce for adultery, but what about indifference? Wasn't that a betrayal too? In 1 Corinthians 7 verse 15, Paul says that if the unbeliever wants to leave, the believer is not enslaved. God calls us to peace. Was my peace worth less than a rule written by men? I decided to talk to Carlos. One night, while he watched TV, I sat beside him on the sofa, heart beating so loudly I was sure he heard. "Do you still love me?" I asked, surrendering, eyes fixed on his. He looked at me surprised, as if the question caught him off guard. Then he lowered his eyes to the floor and remained silent for what seemed like an eternity. "I don't know anymore, Ana," he finally said, voice low, almost a whisper. It was enough. Those simple but heavy words confirmed what I already knew deep in my soul. The love had died long ago, and we were both just pretending it hadn't. Days later, I gathered courage. "I can't do this anymore," Carlos, I said, sitting at the kitchen table, hands gripping a cold cup of coffee. He looked at me for a moment, tired eyes, then nodded. There was no fight, no tears, just a silent agreement that it needed to end. I signed the divorce papers weeks later, hands trembling, but heart lighter than it had been in years. When the judge struck the gavel, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, as if God had opened a window I kept closed out of fear. I returned home alone, but for the first time in decades, I truly breathed. Today I live alone in a small house in São Gonçalo, a simple place with white walls and a yard where I plant jasmines that bloom even out of season. The 7th grade exams are no longer on my table. I retired months later, from ABC, deciding it was time to live for myself, not for others' expectations. It's not the end I imagined at 25, married and surrounded by children, but it's a new beginning God gave me, a gift I didn't know I could ask for. I learned that He doesn't want to see us trapped, whether in a loveless marriage, in fear of what others will say, or in rules men created in His name. Marriage is sacred, yes, but it's not greater than the heart God created to love, to be loved, and to find peace. I live with less weight now. I wake up early, water my plants, read the Bible without guilt, go to church without hiding behind a forced smile. I still hear criticism, "You abandoned your vow, Anna, marriage is forever," but they don't shake me anymore. God showed me that what matters is the heart, not the rule. He didn't create me to carry chains, but to walk free, head held high, knowing He sees me as I am, imperfect but loved. Maybe you're trapped where you are too. Maybe it's a marriage that lost life, a fear that paralyzes you, a guilt that doesn't belong to you. Maybe you wake up every day with a question you don't dare speak aloud: does God want me to live like this? I tell you, ask Him the truth, He answers, not with thunder or grand visions, but with a whisper you only hear when you stop being afraid. My life didn't end with the divorce, it started anew, lighter, more mine, and yours can start too if you have the courage to take the first step. I don't know what comes next. Sometimes I find myself thinking, what if I meet someone? What if one day I love again? I don't have all the answers yet, but I know God didn't bring me here to abandon me. He gave me a second chance, not just to live, but to be happy, and that's enough for now. If this story touched you, don't keep it to yourself. Comment, I want the truth. If you're also seeking freedom, whether from a weight you carry, a fear that holds you, or a doubt that consumes you, share it with someone who needs to hear this, a friend trapped in silence like mine, a mother who thinks enduring is her only destiny, a young person afraid of making mistakes in life. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of faith, hope, and new beginnings. Each one is a piece of my journey for you. Have you ever felt something greater calling you? A whisper in the wind, a light in the dark, a force pulling you out of the prison you built yourself? Don't wait for a scare like mine to respond. The truth sets free, but only if you have the courage to live it. May He bless you and give you strength to take the first step. Today, now. My beloved child, I have always been by your side. If this message spoke to you, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel. Watch the next video on the screen. A testimony that will build up your life.